Okay, so you know how we love to dig into the really opinionated stuff, right?
Yeah.
This one is pretty interesting.
Okay.
It's a book, actually, and the title is a bit of a mouthful. Um, you're ready for this?
Yeah, lay on me.
Perché I metodi tradizionali del bodybuilding sono una fregatura, mentre è l'approccio alternativo che dà I veri risultati.
Wow.
I know, right?
I'm guessing that's Italian.
You got it.
All right.
It basically means why conventional bodybuilding methods are a ripoff, while the alternative approach yields real results.
Yeah, so getting right to the point.
No kidding.
Wow.
The author is Stuart McRobert, and this was copyrighted back in 2000.
Okay.
And get this, it's published by Olympians News, and they actually encourage free sharing.
Interesting.
Yeah, their website's www.olympian.it if anyone wants to check that out.
Cool.
So basically, McRobert comes out swinging and says that most of what people think they know about bodybuilding is just plain wrong.
Yeah, I'm seeing that already.
Especially if you're trying to build muscle naturally. So in this deep dive, we're going to break down why he's so passionate about this and what his alternative approach actually is.
Awesome.
That way you can decide if there's a better way for you to train.
Love it.
So McRobert's not exactly subtle about his feelings.
Uh-huh.
He even says he wants to put bare the squalid filth of the training world.
Whoa.
Like, that's intense, right?
Yeah, he's not holding back.
Not at all.
Uh-huh.
He calls himself a rebel with a cause and thinks you need this kind of like no-nonsense perspective to break free from the mainstream training system.
I mean, it definitely grabbed your attention.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's his background like?
Well, he's been in the bodybuilding world for over 25 years, so he's not some newbie.
Right.
He's written hundreds of articles, like a ton of them, plus 4 books.
Zig.
And he's been publishing his own training magazine since 1989.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, and a big thing is that he's always stayed independent from supplement companies.
Interesting.
So that suggests he's not trying to sell you anything.
Yeah, that definitely adds some credibility.
Right, like he's not beholden to any big supplement brands.
Exactly.
And here's why this is important for, like, you know, the average person trying to build muscle.
Okay.
McRobert's really clear that he has average genetics himself.
Yeah.
He's never used steroids or anything. And he has to balance his training with work and family just like a lot of us.
So he's coming from a relatable place.
Totally. He gets the struggles.
Yeah.
So it makes sense why he's so driven to help others avoid the same mistakes he made.
Makes sense.
He doesn't want anyone to waste time and money on stuff that doesn't work.
Yeah.
He even asked these questions like, have you wasted years training the wrong way? Have you gotten injured from bad exercises?
Yeah.
Have you spent a fortune on supplements that didn't do anything?
Oh, yeah. He's been there.
Right.
Yeah.
And have you been misled about drug use? So he's tapping into these like common frustrations that a lot of people experience. Okay, so when he talks about conventional bodybuilding, what does he actually mean?
Good question.
He's talking about the type of training that's promoted in most bodybuilding magazines and books.
Wow.
You know, the kind of routines you see competitive bodybuilders doing.
Those crazy workouts.
Exactly, like hitting the gym 4 to 6 times a week,
Uh-huh.
doing tons of different exercises for each muscle group,
Yeah.
and doing at least 3 sets of every exercise.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
That's the stuff he's really criticizing.
Okay. So what's his beef with that approach?
He's got a whole list of reasons why he thinks it's a ripoff, especially for natural lifters.
All right, let's hear it.
Number 1, he says it leads to overtraining. And he doesn't just mean feeling sore after a workout.
Great.
He means pushing your body way past its limits so it can't recover properly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that can actually stop you from building muscle or even make you weaker.
Especially if you're not on steroids or have like crazy genetics.
Exactly. So McRobert's saying that more is not always better.
Yeah. Got to rest and recover.
Right.
Okay, so what's his next point?
He says that conventional bodybuilding routines often include risky exercises, the kind that can easily cause injuries.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some of those.
And he says they even encourage dangerous techniques for exercises that are actually fine on their own.
Like what?
Like pushing through pain or using bad form just to lift more weight.
Yeah, that's never good.
And he's right. Injuries are the worst thing when you're trying to make consistent progress.
Totally. It sets you back so much.
Okay, his third point is a big one for people with busy lives.
Okay.
He says that the amount of time you have to spend in the gym with these conventional routines is just not realistic for most people.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like, who has time to train 4 to 6 days a week?
Especially with work and family and everything else.
Right. He's saying you shouldn't have to live in the gym to see results.
That's a good point.
Especially when those long workouts aren't even the best way to train for a natural lifter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he's really against how much emphasis is put on supplements. He's not saying they're all bad,
Okay.
but he's saying they can't make up for a bad training program.
Right. Got to get the basics right first.
Exactly.
So what else does he have a problem with?
He's also not a fan of how conventional bodybuilding sets these unrealistic expectations.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
Because they always show these genetically gifted guys, like the ones who build muscle easily and the ones who are often using steroids.
Yeah.
So it's like comparing yourself to someone who's already miles ahead.
Makes sense.
He's saying don't get discouraged if you don't look like those guys.
Right. It's not a fair comparison.
Exactly.
So is there anything else he criticizes?
Yeah. He also thinks conventional bodybuilding makes training way too complicated.
How so?
You see these routines with like a million different exercises.
Yeah, seen those.
And he thinks it's better to keep things simple,
Okay.
focus on the basics,
Right.
and be consistent.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But maybe his biggest criticism is that conventional bodybuilding doesn't account for individual differences.
That's an interesting point.
Like everyone's different, right?
Yeah, for sure.
We all have different genetics, different goals,
Right.
different lifestyles.
Yeah.
And conventional bodybuilding just throws everyone into the same routine.
And that's why so many people get frustrated or injured.
Exactly.
Okay, so his criticisms are definitely making me think twice about those conventional routines.
Right. And there's one more big point he makes.
Okay.
He says that these conventional methods can actually encourage drug use.
How so?
Well, because natural athletes often can't get the same results on these crazy high-volume programs. They might feel like they're not good enough.
Right.
And they might start thinking about using steroids to catch up.
So it's like setting people up for failure almost.
Kind of,
Yeah.
yeah. He's saying that these mainstream methods are just not designed for natural lifters.
Yeah, and they might be pushing people towards something that's dangerous and unhealthy.
It's-
So what's his take on the whole drug use thing in bodybuilding?
He's really outspoken about it, actually.
My
He
God.
calls it the second calamity.
Wow, the second calamity.
Yeah, like it's a huge problem.
So what's so bad about it, in his view?
He thinks it's basically destroyed trust in the bodybuilding community.
How so?
Because a lot of guys who got big and famous from using steroids, they deny ever using them.
Really?
Yeah, so it creates this illusion that those results are achievable naturally.
And that messes with people's perceptions of what's possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's not cool. And he's really concerned about the health risks of steroids.
Of course.
But he thinks the biggest damage is to the natural athletes. The ones who are trying to follow these drug-fueled routines and not getting the same results.
Yeah, they must feel so discouraged.
Totally, and it can make them more likely to try steroids themselves.
So it's like a vicious cycle.
Kind of, yeah.
So what's the alternative?
McRobert believes that natural athletes can still get great results, but they need to train differently.
How differently?
He lays out a whole system in his book.
Okay.
And he's adamant that natural lifters should never compare themselves to guys who are using drugs.
Good advice.
Yeah, he calls those guys genetic freaks. He's all about training naturally,
Right.
focusing on health,
Uh-huh.
and achieving your own personal best.
Yeah, that's a much healthier mindset.
Totally.
So one thing that really stood out to me is how McRobert completely disagrees with the idea of training like a champion.
Yeah, he thinks that's a huge misconception.
What's his reasoning there?
Well, he argues that tons of people have tried to copy the routines of elite bodybuilders.
Right.
And they failed to get the same results.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he thinks the fitness industry ignores these failures and just keeps pushing the train like a champion message.
Because it sells.
Exactly.
So why does McRobert think it's a bad idea to train like a champion?
He says it's because these elite guys are often genetically gifted,
Okay.
and they're often using steroids.
So their routines are not designed for the average person.
Right. Those guys can handle a lot more volume and intensity.
Exactly.
So it's not really a fair comparison.
No, it's not.
And it can set people up for disappointment or even injury.
Exactly.
So McRobert is basically saying that you should train in a way that's appropriate for your own body and goals.
Exactly.
Not try to copy someone who's in a completely different category.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about McRobert's criticisms of conventional bodybuilding and his thoughts on drug use.
Right.
So what about his own approach?
Well, he has this whole system that he calls intelligent abbreviated training.
Okay, what's that all about?
It's basically the opposite of those crazy high-volume routines.
Okay.
He believes in training less often, doing fewer exercises, and focusing on the most effective movements.
The basics.
Yeah.
So how often does he recommend training?
No more than twice a week.
Really?
Yeah. And each workout is pretty short.
Interesting.
And he emphasizes perfect form and progressive overload.
Right. So gradually increasing the weight you lift over time.
Exactly.
And what about supplements?
He's not a big fan of most bodybuilding supplements.
Yeah.
He thinks a lot of them are just hype.
Right.
And he says you don't need them to build muscle.
Okay. So what does he recommend instead?
He says the most important thing is to eat a healthy diet, get enough sleep,
Right.
and train consistently.
Yeah, those are the fundamentals.
Exactly. And he's all about avoiding risky exercise.
Yeah.
The ones that can cause injuries.
Makes it.
And of course, he's totally against using drugs.
Okay, so his approach is all about training smarter, not harder.
Yeah, and working with your body, not against it.
I like that.
So overall, McRobert's book is a pretty scathing critique of the bodybuilding industry.
Yeah, he doesn't hold back.
But it's also a call to action.
How so?
He wants people to be more informed, more critical,
Right.
and to take control of their own training.
Yeah, don't blindly follow the hype.
So what's the main takeaway for listeners?
I think it's that there's a better way to train,
Okay.
a way that's more effective, safer,
Right.
and more sustainable for the long term.
Yeah, and a way that doesn't involve drugs or crazy supplements.
Exactly.
So what's McRobert's final piece of advice?
He encourages everyone to check out his book series.
Okay, what's it called?
It's called The Advanced Method for Muscle and Power Training.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's got 3 books in it.
Okay.
Beyond Brawn,
Okay.
Weight Training Technique,
Got it.
and the Muscle and Power Training Guide.
All right.
And he says these books have over 95% of the information that most lifters will ever need.
Wow, that's a bold claim.
Yeah, but he seems pretty confident. And he offers a money-back guarantee if you're not happy.
So he's putting his money where his mouth is.
Exactly.
I like that.
So as you're listening to this and thinking about your own fitness journey,
Yeah.
ask yourself, are you training for the short-term hype? Or are you training for the long-term results?
That's a good question.
Like, are you trying to look good for a few weeks or months?
Right.
Or are you trying to build a physique that you can be proud of for years to come?
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
And are you doing it in a way that's healthy and sustainable?
For sure.
That's the real key.
Well said.
All right, that wraps up our deep dive for today.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We'll catch you in the next one.
Sounds good.